And even it's been times where, you might do so much and you think, okay, once I get it, I'm going to feel good. And it's like, I got it. It's like, that was it. Or, the comment you made about, cultures, I've definitely, which my mom, she made this joke because one time I lost a lot of weight and I started to gain some back. I got it together now. But I went home to St. Louis and my grandma was like, oh, did you pick up some weight? And my mom was like, why would you ask that? She had told me in the car, she was like, you can tell the person got weight by looking at them. So why would I, why do you, but I think some people, honestly, we're creatures of habit. So we think that's normal because that's all we've seen. But also, too, some people may think maybe you don't notice. Like, oh, maybe you don't notice you're fat. Maybe you don't notice. I don't know. Maybe your drawers didn't tell you, your t-shirt didn't tell you. So I'm going to tell you. I don't know. But so much to unpack so early. What's up, y'all? So, look, let me just go ahead and keep it short with you. Did you know that as of 2024, the United States has a literacy problem? 21% of adults cannot read, and 54% of them have been recorded and it has been documented read below a sixth grade level. That is a catastrophe. But that's where I step in. Now, I'm not going to teach the grown folks how to read and write. However, PSA, the Ghostwriting Solution, has now a new package. It's called the Literacy Liftoff, and it caters to 9th through 12th graders who struggle with reading, writing, and comprehension. This new tutoring service will offer vocabulary skills, teaching students how to literally write from the bottom, literally teaching them how to do an introduction paragraph, how to do a hook, how to do a conclusion, how to add a little razzle dazzle and how to add their own personal touch to it. Okay. Now, you know what you're saying. Well, that's what they go to school for. Absolutely. But as an ex-teacher, the teachers just don't have time. So this program has 3 different packages from 3 different sets of hours that you can take. So if you're an AP, a principal, the student who needs help, the parent of the student, or you just know somebody who needs the help. If you're in the Houston area, you can get in-person tutorials. But if you are not in Houston, there are also virtual options offered as well. So hit me up at my email, theprodigyperspective@gmail.com and or psathepodcast.com, and we will hook you up. And just like that, we're back again for another super hot fire episode of PSA the Mental Health Podcast. Now, fun fact, I used to use that phrase like almost every episode last season. This season, I was trying to shy away from using that phrase because it's a little extra. Not extra, I don't mind being extra, but a little like cheesy a little bit. But I was like, you know what? It's me. So I can't stop being me for nobody. And that's something I want people to learn. I realize, if nothing else, be yourself, even if it is a little cheesy, strange, weird, whatever. So yeah, and I wasn't trying to preach this early, but I mean it works, right? So we're gonna run with it. Now by the time you're seeing this episode, I actually haven't recorded an episode for a while now, breaking the fourth wall a little bit, because I actually have, recorded a bunch of episodes right before we started season 8. And so now I'm actually starting to record some more because I'm recording one today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. And then I can even chill even more because I still just got episodes just sitting on ice. And all content creators, let there be a message, because you just never know, like, because my business is starting to boom like crazy. And I'm glad I listened, because I felt like I was trying to say, just be proactive, be prepared. So here we are. But today is a great episode because we're talking about limitations again, but this time we're talking about more so from the angle of with the base word of limit, not limitations, but living a limitless life. But we will have a little conversation about limitations because you kind of have to, but it's not fully just engulfed in that. So let's start with this week's meme that says, the world may see my limitation, but God doesn't. Inspirations come from a few places. So first of all, DJ Khaled. Like, first of all, my thing with DJ Khaled is, first of all, he's so funny. But like that meme kind of is the embodiment of him from a different angle, because you know how he'll be like, but God did. They said we couldn't do it, but God did. You know what I mean? And I really like when he be saying, what he was saying? He was like, I don't lose weight because I don't lose. Now I don't agree with that, but I get the concept of what he's going for. Luke 137, it says, for nothing with it will be impossible with God. The movie Limitless, starring Bradley Cooper, came out in 2011. I don't know if any of y'all have seen it. That's another form of inspiration for this episode. A quote by Jim Quick that says, the life you are, the lessons you teach, be limitless. And then obviously my guest today, who I'll be introducing shortly. So I think her life and her background is the epitome of limitless. Okay. Now, y'all, let's get into a quick rant. As always, let's get into happy hour. So for today's happy hour, although by the time the recording of this, I haven't eaten anything and I'm obviously not drinking anything, but let's get to talking. So first thing I want to talk about, and really this happy hour, let's talk about, as we talk, it correlates with the episode. It's crazy how everything always aligns. You know those people in high school, and for some of us that went to college. And this is not to bash nobody, but we got to have this conversation. You know those people that literally peaked in high school or college? Like you look back, it wasn't me for sure, but you look back and like, not saying there's nothing wrong with high school or college being like the time of your life, but those people who are stuck in that time of life, you know, we shame people, or not shame, but it's expected for, you know, how when a person goes to jail, and they're in jail. Say they went to jail in 1995 and they get out in 2000, just hypothetical. What is 2024? So, okay, say somebody went to jail in 2013 and they get out now. They're still going to be in the mindset, the fashion sense as they were then. I believe some people are really stuck in that popularity that went to their head in high school, college. And it's just like, in short, let it go. But it's just like, we need to have this conversation because you can tell it's eating people alive. It's eating them alive that they are still stuck in that world. And it's so many people that come to mind when they was just like, that person at the high school and college, it was like they was the man. They were the man, like they was gonna be all these things. And then sometimes it's just like they just fizzled out. What do you think was the underlying cause of that? Why do you think that person fizzled out? This person that had so much potential was going to be the next the next president, the next basketball star, had everything lined up and they just fizzled out. What happened to those people? Are you that person? That's something to wonder. You know what I mean? Because somebody here might have happened. I believe that some people could have peaked as far as on paper, like you might have peaked in high school, college. But I believe, of course, in redemption. And I also believe that nobody actually does. It's just I think you might not have outgrown that mindset that you was in then. And a lot of people are still stuck in those mindsets. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. You getting out of it, but you need to be aware. So I want you to send it to somebody who well, it's kind of shady, huh? But maybe not send it to somebody who peaked in high school. But let's keep this on file. And if you feel that this caters to you, let's do something about it. Let's do something about it. I feel like I know we can do something about it. Because your life don't have to stop and you don't have to keep replaying the memories of those good times, because you can make some more. So don't, you know what I mean? And of course, some people are like, oh, my body was the best. See, I was fat back there. Y'all know, fat. So it was a little different for me. But, some people, oh, I had the best body then. Oh, I wish I could go back then. And it's just like, let's create new memories. Let's create new. So if you was reaching for the sky back then, let's reach for the stars this time. Give you something else new to do. I like that. Somebody give me I'm gonna put that on a shirt. There we go. But all right, y'all. So I am done ranting, but I'm serious. Send that to somebody. So I have a great guest today. She is the person who I feel like, as I stated earlier, is the epitome of someone who lives a limitless life. And she has a lot going on. And she had a lot going on and still. So she keeping the ball rolling with that. So let me go ahead and introduce her right now. Doctor, what is going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. It is hot outside. The wind is blowing. I need to go work out. Probably will in a minute. Probably after I'm done with this. But, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Okay, so obviously my YouTube people can't see your name, but because I have the audio, I want you to tell the people what's your name, where you from, and then I want you to tell me where you live now.
Yeah. So I'm Esther Zeledon. I was born in Nicaragua, but I grew up in the US. So I grew up in California, Miami. I would say I had to choose somewhere I was from, probably Miami, because that's where I spent like my adolescence, where you get your most like, I guess,
Mhm.
childhood stuff. And so yeah, Miami. But I now live in the Dominican Republic in Santo
Oh,
Domingo half the time. Mm-hmm.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So that's
That's
part of my limitless life, not having like one fixed location and being able to go where I want and do what I want. Yeah.
Now we're going to get into that because that's the lifestyle most people want to live. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So now, tell the people what it is that you do.
Yeah. So I tell people I'm in the business of impacting lives. And what I mean by that is I have like a superpower where I can help people identify what their purpose is, what their mission, what their vision, like that thing kind of what you were mentioning, right? Shooting for the stars, right? Remembering what that was. Remembering like, hey, what was that big dream I had? What are my big dreams now? Making those into reality. Because the problem is that most people give up on it, right? They overestimate what they can do in a year. And if it doesn't happen in a year, they're like, oh man, you see, I knew it. Everyone was
Mhm.
right. All those naysayers, they were so I need to stay where I am, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And in 5 years, you could dramatically change your life and pivot into whatever you want and create whatever you want. But most people don't have that patience or that to look into it, right? Or celebrate it along the way so it doesn't feel like I haven't made it there yet. So that's what I help people do is like really first identify what that dream is beyond the external validations because a lot of times we confuse the dreams with what other people want us to do. So
Mm,
very clear on what is that star and is that star yours? And then creating that roadmap so you actually you can make it happen in that 5 year time frame. It could be sooner, right? But let's make it in a reasonable timeline and then keep it going. Like, because so many of us give up on it. Life gets in the way, right? Our families get sick, our parents, our friends, right? Things happen, and then we're like, we don't know how to start again. But it's also about it's not about starting again. It's about keeping it going and doing little by little every day. That even when life is crazy, because it'll always be crazy, you're
mhm.
still building that and go and reaching to that place you want to be.
Absolutely. I like that because so many people, and of course, we talked about this on this podcast several times, but just so many people are caught up in this imaginary deadline. And I think that who gave you that deadline? Nobody gave you that deadline. And a lot of times people put this imaginary deadline on themselves to where, oh, it has to be done by this time. And it's like, why? Why do you have to be married by this time? Why do you have to have kids by this time? Why do you have to have your business plan established at this time? Now, again, in the same breath, that doesn't mean have some type of goal and some type of maybe thing, something set to as far as having it like, okay, I want this done by, not saying you shouldn't have deadlines, but I believe there's a difference between deadline, the self-imposed deadlines of what I want to say, self-imposed deadlines that lead to, I can't get it out, but something in that arena, something in that ballpark. The just self-imposed ones that just aren't possible. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's like with God, all things are possible. That's why I'm a firm believer in, having a plan, asking God, what should I be doing? How should I set this up? You know what I'm saying? And of course, people like yourself can help in the natural, but you need some type of assistance because ultimately you can't do it all on your own. And I actually heard a message recently talking about isolation. Now, I'm a firm believer in isolation to an extent. I believe that isolation should be for seasons. I don't believe we should live a lifestyle of isolation. And I think, unfortunately, this generation prioritizes isolation and feel as though this is what it's supposed to be all the time. And that's not correct. Now, can you share a little bit about your journey across various fields and how these experiences shaped your purpose?
Yeah, yeah. But I was thinking also, I wanted to build on what you were saying too. That's why in the book, as we were talking about those metrics, I
Right.
have chasing the American dream crossed out, because I think the American dream started off as that, like opportunity, but later we put these timelines that like you have to be married before 30, you have to be promoted before 45, you need to retire in the same job by 60, right? Society gave us those things, but those aren't like your legacy. Like when you die and you
Mhm.
go to obituary, you go to celebration of life. No one is talking about your title. No one's talking about if you got married by then, right? They're asking you how you impacted them, how you made them feel. And those are the metrics that we should be working towards, right? And it's what you mentioned, we can still have goals, but that's not like our big goal. And
Right.
so I wanted to say that, but I think in my journey, but how I got there, and I understand it because I was one that chased all those metrics first. My journey was that I grew up in an immigrant family, and actually starts off crazier than that. When I was like a toddler, too little to 2 years old, I almost died, and I was given 3 weeks to live. And my dad's not, he's not super religious, but he's very spiritual. And but my mom is religious. And my dad was like, I want to play the lottery. And my mom's like, are you serious? Like our daughter is only at 3 weeks to live. We have bigger problems in our life right now. The country's going in civil war. This is crazy. And he was like, no, this is super important and we need to buy this lottery. And so they buy it and they win. And with the money, they were able to save my life in Miami because they could not, no doctor in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, or Honduras could do anything for me. So my life is saved. Of course, like that's a type of miracle, right?
Right.
But when we go into the States, what that does to me indirectly, though, is that I felt that I didn't deserve to find out what I wanted to do, because I felt then that my purpose in my life was to help my family. Because at that point, afterwards, the Civil War comes, we have to immigrate. We immigrate just with what we have, and we live paycheck to paycheck, right? So then I'm seeing my parents struggle. And so for in a new country, right, language, all these things. And so for me, I felt, okay, I have to be perfect and the best because I owe it to them because I had this miracle. And they could have used it for something else, and instead they used it on me. So I became the perfect student, all the good grades, went to the great schools. But what it did to me is what you were saying about isolation. What it did to me is that I kind of isolated myself and isolated my suffering, right? Because I felt that I didn't want to burden anyone.
Right.
So I even at one point, I got like really, really like really sad one day over like a breakup, right? This is all natural stuff. But I remember feeling that I couldn't share that with anyone because I would be a burden. And we're not burdens, but I felt that way. And I continued my life. So then I remember finishing my PhD and I thought I was going to feel this lightning moment. I mean, one, there's like less than 1% at that time Latina PhDs. I'm like, I'm part of this trailblazing movement, this whole thing. But I felt super empty that day. Well, I helped my dad finish school that day. For me, I felt super empty because it was a check mark, right? It
Mm.
wasn't something that, it wasn't my star. It was like the star that somebody had also given me that I needed to do, right? Or society, the other things. Then I thought, oh, I need to get married. So then I got married and it didn't go away, and then I said, okay, I'm going to climb the workforce. I got promoted. And I went into that workforce and made a huge difference in the world, right? I was a diplomat. I changed things in the system. And back, and how that system works is that you go to other countries and you go give aid, right? From like the US. But the problem I saw is that we were telling people what they needed. And I'm like, have we stopped and listened to them about what they want? Because I think
Right.
they're very clear what they want. Like, why is this
Mhm.
colonialistic? Like, we should be going there and asking people what they want, and they should be able to tell us, and then we find alignment, right? And back then it was like so radical. No, we don't have time. We have to push money. We're the experts. I'm like, just because they don't have education, they're experts too, right?
Right.
That's not a one-to-one thing. Well, I brought this approach in there, and then and after the 5 years, I thought I would feel amazing, right? I'm here like, well, I helped thousands of people. I brought a new approach, all this stuff. And I remember going home to my dad, and I go to him, I don't think this is what I want to do. And he looks at me crazy because he's like, what are you talking about? You have everything. You have like the job everyone wants. You have the 5-bedroom house. You have help in your house. You have kids. You have everything. you've impacted thousands. And I'm like, okay, but that's not my legacy. And I remember screaming in the living room now. And he's like, whoa, what? Everyone looked at me crazy. But I'm like, it wasn't my North Star. Like for me, I saw a bigger problem. Like I saw like my colleagues that I was telling them about you need to listen to people, that they thought that was crazy. And then when I asked them, why do you think that's crazy? And they're like, well, no one's ever listened to me. I don't even know what I am outside my own title and identity. And I'm like, well, then that's the problem, right? It's not the problem of listening, it's that we don't take the time to listen to others. And I think that's somehow leading to isolation, right? Because some people, they don't want to go home because what happens when we go home a lot? And I can tell you, Latino culture, it's, oh my God, you've put on weight. Oh my
Oh my
God,
God.
do you have a new boyfriend, girlfriend? Or, oh my God, how's it going your job? Why don't you have that promotion yet? Right? It's all these metrics, all this judgment. And so sometimes we prefer to be isolated to not even hear those voices. We already are so self-critical on ourselves. And then to
Right.
go outside and hear that, we're like, that's overwhelming. But I'm here to be like, that's why I left and I became an entrepreneur. And I see myself more like a global movement than an entrepreneur because I want to change these narratives in our communities. And this is across the world. It's not just Latino, it's everywhere. It's like we need to
Yeah.
change that. We need to in Thanksgiving and Christmas and ask people, what is your highest aspiration? What did you dream as a child? What do you want to be sought out for? How can I help you for which? Because just because you're good at something doesn't mean you want to do it, right? So
Right.
first, what is it that you want to be sought out for? How can I help you? What do you need? Those are the conversations we need to have around there and not push these metrics of things that even ourselves we don't want to be asked that, and then we go around asking other people. But so that was my trajectory. And then it's also me letting go of all that because I had all the check marks of the American dream that they shared to us. I did everything by those timelines, but that wasn't me. That wasn't my
Right. Yeah.
alignment. For
Yeah.
me, it was actually, I don't want to live in a house. I want to live in an apartment. I want to see the view of the ocean. I don't want to live in one place. I want to be able to impact people globally. I wanted to speak it totally different. And I built it. And yes, it's a process. It takes time. But I celebrated it all along the way. So rather before when I was like waiting just for like the degree, this time
Right.
when I even wrote my book, I celebrated writing the title, choosing the font, choosing the color. And it was like the best thing I ever did. And even through this process, it's celebrating the seasons, the process, the journey, but I'm showing up how I want to show up to the world. And people are seeking me for what I want to be sought out for. And that's all you need. And it's just taking that one step, you're already in alignment. So for me, the limitless life is whatever life you want to create. When you close your eyes and visualize yourself 5, 10 years, 15, what are you feeling? What are you doing? And that's what I'm doing now. But it's scary and it's hard because everyone around you is going to say it's crazy. But if it's something that you want and you want to do, you can do it.
Well, first of all, that is a great story. We got already pretty deep, and we're barely 20 minutes in, so that's good. So much to unpack there. I do want to pick up a part. Start with first of all the miracle of your birth. Like that is or not, or you not birth, but you still being alive today. And when I've learned typically when you have a lot of warfare, even as a baby, that means you're gonna do something great in the world. And obviously, that's what you're doing now. You know what I'm saying? I so many things that some people. When I say this, I understand what you're saying, but you may say it and it may go over the head of some people. But when you break it down, what you're saying is we are so caught up in trying to reach a goal. And unfortunately, my parents who are now 60 have realized, like, they even say we've been lied to. We've been forced to get these jobs. You can't now. And I said this recently, and I'm going to do an episode over soon, where I said that one, everyone's not called to be an entrepreneur. However, you're at this economy, you're gonna need other sources of income, including some people are meant to be doctors, some people are meant to be financial advisors, some people are meant to be lawyers, all that good stuff, those regular 9 to 5 jobs, right? But you're gonna have to have some other sources of income as well. But what I will say is when you do have that freedom and you just feel as though you're a person who's, and I'm not gonna say too smart, but just too much for a 9 to 5 job, because it's like, okay, I can go to this job. Because see, we probably are polar opposites. You were at the job, you were the perfect worker, you did everything like you were supposed to. You got there probably or 5 minutes early. You might have stayed a few minutes late, or you left right on time. You were the person who did everything across the board, and then you still just felt like this, I feel empty. And even it's been times where you might do so much and you think, okay, once I get it, I'm gonna feel good, and it's like, I got it, it's like, that was it. Or the comment you made about cultures. I've definitely, which my mom, she made this joke, because one time I lost a lot of weight and I started to gain some back. I got it together now, but I went home to St. Louis, and my grandma was like, oh, did you pick up some weight? And my mom was like, why would you ask that? She had told me in the car, she was like, you can tell the person got weight by looking at them. So why would I? Why do you? But I think some people, honestly, we're creatures of habit. So we think that's normal because that's all we've seen. But also, too, some people may think maybe you don't notice. Like, oh, maybe you don't notice you're fat. Maybe you don't notice. I don't know. Maybe your drawers didn't tell you, your t-shirt didn't tell you. So I'm gonna tell you. I don't know. But so much to unpack so early. My next question actually centered around how would you define personal legacy or impact, but you already answered it, so we can go on from there. Now, I have a few words, and I want you to tell me a short, the first thing that comes to mind. Anything, no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
Okay, yeah.
All right. So the first word is limitless,
Aspirations,
vulnerability,
resilience,
and authenticity.
truth. Oh, it's one word, right?
Mhm.
Um, Self.
Okay. All right, so the definitions all come from dictionary.com. Limitless, I think one of them don't, but whatever. Limitless, without limit or boundary, vulnerability to quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. And then authenticity, not false or imitation, real and or actual. All right, y'all. So let's now move into the next segment, which is, what does this have to do with mental health? And we have to kind of bring everything home. So now, let's start with being vulnerable, because when I think of mental health, I think of vulnerable. A lot of times, I actually had this conversation because a while ago, well, one of the impressions, one thing I tell people all the time: if everybody says the same thing about you, it might not be true, but it's something you're doing that's to why the reason they say that. So a lot of times, I've heard in my life, "Oh, you're very secretive. Like you're very like you don't, you know." And when we talk about vulnerability, I want to kind of touch on that real quick. I think with me, I've had too many incidences. Am I saying word right? Incidents, whatever. Yeah. I had too many incidents. Okay, whatever. It's early. Too many incidents where I would reveal things and then it will be thrown back up in my face later. And I think that a lot of this generation is afraid to do that. So now, as a speaker, how are you able to be so vulnerable without shame?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. But yeah, I'm gonna answer with some of those stories actually. And actually, I was thinking I wanted to build up a little bit on what you were saying too. That um, even though I was the perfect worker, and even if you're like the best in your job, you're still bullied all the time. And I think that you just don't share it. And I think that suffers from anyone. So if you're a great worker, not a great worker, right? There's all this toxic workplace thing. So I wanted to tie on that a little bit, right? That even if you're going through your job and maybe someone listening here, right? It's like it feels like something's wrong with them because they're doing everything great, but then everything is still going wrong, right? It's just not the right place. It's not in alignment. And that's what it was for me, even with all the accolades. Um, you're still pushing against the status quo. And when you're doing that, you face resistance, right? And I think you also mentioned too, like some people are meant for 9 to 5, but I think all of us, if we have a purpose that can go into 100 different types of careers and things, right? These are just mental models in our universe. So, if you're even if you're in a 9 to 5, you can switch to another 9 to 5. And
Right.
like you said, you can also have 5 side gigs because you're not tied to a title or an identity or job. Like we can do different things. So I encourage everyone to explore that because like even my thing about helping people with the purpose, I could teach. I could teach at schools. I can be a speaker. I can be a coach, right? I can work in international development. I can also go help entrepreneurs, right? I can, anyone who's looking for clarity, I can help. And that crosses all types of careers. And so, like, it's just encouraging people to think beyond, even if they're in something that they hate right now, they can pivot, because you can pivot to anything because you have a uniqueness that no one else has. And now, of course, I forgot the original question. I used to
Well, no, it
mention
was just saying
mental.
how has being vulnerable helped you
Right.
in your
Okay.
perspective?
And so why I shared that is that I used to be like not vulnerable, like same similar, right? Because what I discovered, like I used to read these books on purpose when I was younger. I was like obsessed with it. But they were all written by white men, and none of them, they weren't look like me, right? And then they didn't talk about how to discover your purpose. It was all about purpose is great. You need it. You need to have that North Star, but no one tells you how. So that's why I confused it with these metrics. And I know a lot of people who I talk to confuse it. They're like, my purpose is to get a 6-figure job. And I'm like, that's
Mhm.
not your purpose. Your purpose is your unique how to the world. But so for me, it was really important to discover what that how to and share it. Japanese has a different model of it. And why I bring this is that vulnerability is a part of it. So, like what you've overcome and how is part of your purpose. So, for example, if I'm someone that helps people, and that's my thing to unpack their purpose, discover it, and live it, it
Mhm.
leads me vulnerable to staying in things too long. Now, you know how you were saying yours. Mine is I should get out of relationships sooner, jobs sooner, partnerships sooner. But I like to see it through. I want to see the full transformation because that's really tied to my purpose. But then what that does to me, if it's the wrong thing, I
Mhm.
stay in it when I should have gotten out. I don't listen to my intuition and gut because I want to see the whole thing. So sometimes then we confuse that there's something wrong with us. And then we think something's wrong with us because, oh man, it keeps going wrong when I show up as myself. But what it is
Right.
that we're not really filtering correctly. So, like for now, for me, since I understand what I've overcome and how, the minute, like even if it seems perfect, like in a 30-minute discovery call with anyone, anything, any opportunity, if I don't feel it in my gut that it's right, I just say no. And it's nothing against that personal opportunity, but now I've learned to follow what feels right. So I'm not in those situations anymore and I could show up on how I want. So, but it took me a long time to discover that part, right? So I encourage people sometimes, like you said, it's really tied to what you've overcome and how you've created these spaces around us to not fall into that again. But it's like taking a different lens on that. Like, why are you falling into that? What filter aren't you putting? You've already overcome that before. Why don't you put that in your day to day so you don't fall into that again, but you could show up as how you are? And when I wrote my book, the easy part was writing out all the formula. I didn't want to write
Right.
my story. I didn't want to share it. And the publisher was like, "You have to share your story. That's how you connect with people." And I was like, "Well, I don't really want to." Well, one, I had this perception that I was like, "Well, one, I'm not a war child. I'm not starving, or I didn't get shot, so my story is not that important." And they're like, "What are you talking about? You have this amazing story, right?" And so a lot of times we think, and we don't want to share anything about us because we're like, oh, well, nothing really horrific has happened to me. And actually, horrible things happened to me. But I thought in perspective, right? We try to be like, oh, nothing, I'm not, we compare ourselves to other people. And so we don't want to share it. And then I didn't want to upset my family. Because, outside the family, you don't talk about money, you don't talk about problems, you don't talk about struggles. That's how I grew up, right? You keep it inside. So when you grow up with those narratives, you also don't want to share it. And I didn't want to expose them. And I didn't want to risk my professional reputation.
Right.
So, but part of being authentic is you have to be vulnerable. But if I'm not sharing that, and I'm not sharing the struggle and how long it took me to set myself free to be limitless, then there's no credibility to it. And for me, that was the ultimate test. And that's what took me the longest. And I deleted and put it back in, deleted and put it back in. It's a process. But once you actually do it, you're free.
It's interesting because I think we grow up in that mindset of keeping it in the house, like you said,
Yep.
and it's that, oh, don't be telling them people all your business. What are you doing? And even with me, it's some things that I've shared a lot, but I still haven't shared everything quite yet. I believe I'm going to have to. And the first thing I think is, what are people gonna say about my parents? What are people gonna say to them? How are they gonna feel? When it
Exactly.
doesn't, in reality, it doesn't really have anything to do with them. As bad as that's the reality. Now, subconsciously, I have not received that, but consciously, I can say I've accepted it. And so, let me ask this before I go into what does this have to do with mental health with the notes. What would be your tips to someone who is bound? Because that's what that is. You're bound by the opinion of their family. What would be your yeah?
Yeah. I mean, that was me. And I remember even being terrified in my book signing. So I left my home city last, Miami, because I knew my parents would go. And I had to practice it a bunch of times so before that because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be talking about this stuff in front of them. But the truth is, a lot of the narratives we have in our mind are actually worse than what it is. And it's actually looking into higher
Mm,
perspective as well. That this, again, is exactly what you said. It's not about them, right? What is the purpose in sharing it? Who are you helping and who are you impacting? And so I actually sat with my family before the book came out. I had shared it with my sister because there were parts that she had to clear, but I didn't share with my parents. And I sat them down before the book came out and I said, look, you're going to read stuff. It's probably going to make you super uncomfortable because I'm sharing this with the world and I know you're not going to agree. But this isn't about you. I love you. This is not like a judgment of your parenting skills. It's not a judgment of who you guys are as individuals. I know you guys did the best ever. Basically, every single fear you have. Like, what was I fearing in sharing that? I was fearing that they wouldn't think I would love them. I was fearing that they would think I would think they were a failure as parents, right? I transferred all those fears and just told them directly, the opposite. I love you as parents. I think you did the best you could, right? Up front. And I
yeah.
said, but this is not about you. I know that my
Right.
story is going to help thousands of people. And so I have to share this. And so I understand though if you're not in agreement or don't want to go to the signing, all that stuff, right? But this is my truth and this is the only way I'm going to set myself free. And I had suffered through depression and anxiety my whole life. And I was like, if I don't share that, then other people like I are going to go in the world thinking there's something wrong with them. And through my I'm so glad I shared it. Like through my book, so many people have reached out and been like, I've suffered through the same thing and never been able to share it with anyone. I've been through the same things at work and I was never able to share it. I feel that emptiness you said, or I want to take that step and I've never had the courage, or I grew up the same. Right. And we don't share it. So someone has to. And so I told them I had to. So you have to see it beyond them and realize
Right.
that this is a calling beyond you and the people around you. Communicate that. And maybe they won't agree at first. Like I've
Right.
had people close to me that they didn't agree with what I was doing at first. They were actually really upset that I was talking about a lot of this stuff publicly. But now they've slowly come around. So I also have empathy for the naysayers. I call them naysayers or whatever you want to call them, right? Empathy for the people at first that are not along on your journey because they may just be also projecting everything that's been told to them. And little by little, some of them may come around. So it's also leaving that space for them that when they are ready, because like you said, there's no timeline. When they go on their journey, they might come around back. And I've given that space for people like that. And so I would say that's the advice. Think bigger than you. Why do you need to share it? Who's it going to impact? Tell your family what you fear. And they might come around, they may not, but this is bigger than them. My family did come around, and my parents did. Not all my extended, but my parents. And that was great. But by the time they came around though, I wasn't waiting or looking for it. Do you know what I mean? I had already come to terms that this was bigger. And whether they came around or not, I was still doing it. That was just a bonus. And we have to see our stuff bigger than that. And the people who love and support you, like really, like your champions, like I mean, those people who are like when you say something crazy, they're like, hell yeah, man, I'm behind you. Those
Yeah.
people are going to be there. And that's what matters.
Yeah. No, for sure. I want to first start off with the whole thing about fear. You said a lot of times it's worse in our heads. I had the revelation recently of the comparison of from Batman, the Batman villain, what's his name? Scarecrow. And how Scarecrow, and I actually seen a video, it was an old clip from one of the old Batman games, and it was a clip of Batman being tied up, and Scarecrow was doing something where he was like creating the hallucinogens, and he was just seeing all this stuff, and it was just so horrible and terrible, and it was just the worst thing ever. And let me tell you how funny it was. So finally, once Batman was able to break free from this, he got free, and then somebody punched Scarecrow, and he blacked out. So there's a few things to break down. So one, like she said, fear is much bigger in your head than it is in real life. Fear is a spirit, fear is a liar, it's a voice, and it's not, what it is. And this, when they got to the root of the problem, which was Scarecrow, Batman, who's a professional fighter, didn't even have to beat him up. Somebody else punched Scarecrow and he blacked out. So that's how weak fear is, to the point where it will put in your mind it's so much this big tall tale, and in reality it's really nothing. And it was really all in your head. And so I like that, but I also like how you say, you basically saying in so many words, you either get with it or get lost. And I think that a lot of us fear that we'll lose our family, but in reality, we're not going to lose them. We may stop talking to them. They may, and not even permanently. They may just have to process everything. And it is hard to hear a lot of stuff, I feel like, about your kids, like, oh, this happened to you, this, and it's just like, then they feel like, and I've heard comments like, well, I wasn't there, I didn't do this, and then they kind of beat themselves up about it. And it's like, respectfully, if I'm over it, you need to be over, because I actually lived through it. So that's something to keep in mind too. So now, how does this pertain to mental health? So the first one, it says achieving your full potential enhances well-being, according to Abraham Maslow, and toward a psychology of being. Reaching your full potential significantly enhances your well-being. He notes that living authentically and striving to achieve all that you're capable of not only reduces anxiety and depression, but also increases happiness. The second one is continuous learning keeps your mind healthy. Research article titled Lifelong Learning and Mental Health from the International Journey of Lifelong Education shows that lifelong learning and continuous personal development can prevent cognitive decline and improve emotional health. This study supports the idea of a limitless life by highlighting how new learning experiences contribute to mental resilience and overall emotional balance. The third one is setting goal for purposeful life boosts happiness. A study in the Journal of Happiness Study shows indicates setting personal goals aligned with one's values can lead to higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. This research emphasizes the pursuing meaningful and challenging goals is a core aspect of living a limitless life, which in turn bolsters mental health by providing a sense of purpose and achievement. So going back to the second one, talking about continuous learning, 2 and 3 are aligned to me. Continuous learning and setting goals. Like we said earlier, about once if you reach the sky this time, let's go for the stars the next time. Then after that, go for the higher star than that. And then, like, I believe that lifelong learning. Some people think that they have to stay in school their whole life. Like, I know some people who want to get degree after degree after degree. If that's what you want to do, cool. But we live in the information age. Most things that we went to get degrees for, we really didn't even need. Some obviously did, of course, if you're a doctor and that kind of thing, but a lot of stuff you didn't even need. And then 2, the whole thing about setting goals. I believe your goals should increase every time. Certain goals you may try to keep, but once you get this goal, okay, let's get to the next one. You know what I mean? It's just, and sometimes when I think of one goal that some people may say, oh, it'll end, I think of weight loss, right? So you say, I'm going to get to the goal weight, which I've gotten. It got to that goal, that dream weight on the scale, and you still won't have it because we were so caught up in the metrics. We weren't caught up in, I want to see body transformation, because in reality you can be the same weight at the weight that you don't like, and your body could look drastically different. And we can set the goal of saying, let's just try to eat healthier through the week. Little things like that. Let's make it to say, let me have one raw meal a day. So let me have one meal that's not cooked, just raw fruits and vegetables. One, what I'm saying? It's so many ways you could go with that. So many ways. Now, you've already kind of spoken on vulnerability and courage. And so how do you think this can be more of a strength? Or how can this perspective take more of a strength, can be more of a strength than a weakness?
For sure. Well, it's because I think I mentioned it ties to your purpose, right? So I think if you see it as, hey, my superpower has this, has this other side of it, and it's not a weakness, right? Like staying, me wanting to see transformation through to the end is not a weakness, right? It's just part of it. It's just something I have to look out for because not every situation I want to see through.
Right.
So I think if you see it that way, the things that make you vulnerable is because it's kind of like the kryptonite of Superman, right? I would never say Superman was weak. There's just something he should not approach because it's the other side of him, right? And so this is just the other side of it. And it doesn't make you weak at all. He's not weak. It's just something to keep an eye out on, and also to know yourself, right? Because everything is a balance in this world. Everything is energy flow, right? So there's going to be stuff that you have to look out for to give out your superpower to this planet. So the way you can use it as a strength too is like, for me, like that's why I don't believe in like cookie cutter self-care, right? Like even when you were mentioning with the weight loss, right? It's going to be a different program for each person because every person has a different vulnerability into why they can't stick to it or what's going on, right? So like in my case, if I do that exercise, and this is something I have in my workbook, like what I've overcome and how. Let's say, right, I have depression, I have anxiety, right, staying in things too long, self-doubt, right? So what I have instead of waiting till I hit crisis mode to bring out what things that help me, I integrate that in my everyday. So even if my goal, for example, like this year has been, I'm exercising every day 30 minutes a day, right? But more because I want to feel good like all day, because in 20 years in my vision, I'm sitting having a conversation, but I'm healthy, I'm mobile, right? I haven't had surgeries, right? It's like health related, my vision in my future. So in my everyday, to get myself to go, if I know that I suffer with self-doubt, depression, anxiety, what works for me is looking at the testimonials of people who have impacted me, right? That's in my what helped me. So every morning when I wake up, instead of scrolling on social media, I read 5 testimonials because that's what helped me in crisis. And so instead of using crisis, I use it every day. Another thing that helps me is like doing a little bit of breath work because I know my day's crazy. So I'm always like running around, right? So I'm like, I'm going to take 5 minutes to bring enough oxygen through my body to make the workout even more effective, my own thing more effective, right? But again, these are things that work for me. Everyone else is going to be different. But putting in the things that have always helped you is going to make those goals more obtainable, because now I don't wake up with self-doubt, right? I'm not going to fall into depression or anxiety. I'm also, because I'm doing breath work, I'm more in tune into like what's aligned with me. So I'm not going to pick decisions that are off with me. So I'm going to stick to my 30-minute workout a day, right? And so it's so like that. I don't see them as weakness. I see it as powerful. I'm using the things that have always helped me into my everyday, and that, I think, even creates even more power in your own superpower. And I encourage everyone to do that, right? Don't like everyone's like, oh well, my friend told me to do this. No, go into like what has helped you, and I'm sure everybody could teach you different little things, but like resort to that, and then start with that, and then build and test other things that people share with you, and see it as, man, my vulnerability is actually strength.
Okay, good stuff. I like that. I like that. Now let's move on to the next segment, which is I challenge that. So we're going to challenge some things that we've been talking about. So the first question is, I'm going to say yes, but, and then I'll let you answer. Are there times when we should have limits? Now I say yes, because you hear limitless and now instantly think of a buffet. And when I say that, I mean it physically, but also psychologically and even spiritually. So let me explain. So when I think of a buffet, obviously, back in the day when you were broke and you had no money, you seen a little Chinese buffet. It was $6.99. It's me and my friends talked about that literally last night. Like, remember we went to that Chinese buffet and then everybody was sick afterwards and all that good stuff, right? So in the moment, you see limitless, you think I'm gonna eat everything inside. I'm gonna eat everything and eat till I pop, right? And then you do that, and then what happens? You're sick, you don't feel good. Sometimes you feel it in the physical with food. That's the most obvious, but we don't realize when we're doing it spiritually or psychologically. So let me explain. We talked about this before in this podcast. I'm gonna keep talking about it. I am an advocate for not watching the news. I am anti-news. I am anti propaganda. I listen to my grandma. She always talks about, she just studies the news. You would think she gets a notepad out and takes notes. It's just like she just can keep up with everything in the news and will remember word for word. And I'm just so scared. And I'm just like, turn it off. So you're at that point, you're indulging on a bunch of that. Sometimes we get caught up in social media, right? One who has a bad habit of doing it, websites, or not websites, but like Instagram, places like the Shade Room and Baller Alert and TMZ. That was the one that was still accurate, but those places thrive on that negativity. And that's what it is. And when you're constantly bombarded with the mess, what they don't tell you about bombarding yourself with mess is you start to live in paranoia, because now you're wondering, oh man, I wonder if I'm being watched. And they never talk about this part. Oh, I wonder if somebody saw me do that, or did they see me do this? And it's like, you're not a celebrity, one. You should feel like you're being watched to an extent, but you're not a celebrity. No one's keeping up with you. But two, it's just it increases, which I didn't plan on going with this conversation, but a lot of people's limitations, which we talked about again, season 7. But living a limitless life, you cannot live a limitless life if you are bound by fear. There we go. You cannot live a limitless life if you are bound by fear. Now, I want to go back to the happy hour segment. And I talked about people who reached their peak in high school, where you look at people and it's like, wow, like, I thought you were going to be so much more than what you are. Do you know people like that? And or if that person was to come to you as a client, would you be able to help them?
Yeah, I actually know a lot of people like that, and I have helped them because something happened along the way, right? Like they had all this self-confidence, clarity, but again, a lot of times it was metric bound, right? It was whatever was there at that moment. Like think about it, in high school, there's also metrics. Football star, cheerleader, or like student council president, whatever. And then afterwards, they leave there, they lose that community, but they tied that community just to that place. And afterwards, like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what's the worth behind that. And it's always dreaming of the past. I even felt kind of like victim to that. And I could relate to them a little bit because actually I can relate to them a lot, right? Because actually in graduate school, I had this great community and this great community of friends. And when I left graduate school, I didn't have that anymore. But what are the narratives? Again, societal narratives, right? My family would be like, well, that's only in school. Now you have to have the real life. You're like real world, get a job. Like that was you had your friends then, and now you have to have a job and do these things. And we're also taught those things. So then they kind of lose that community, lose that support, which is probably what they all loved. And then they feel alone, and then they lose all motivation, inspiration. But the way I see it, I've helped everyone. I've even those people, or even like fishermen in villages, right? Because I've done my work all around the world. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a dream. Some people have lost it, whether they were on top in high school because of some narrative they were told, or they thought they can't create that community again, or they don't know what value they bring. But it's just unpacking that again. Of course, you have value. You even have value outside of being that title you were in high school. You have a gift. People went to you and reached out to you for a reason, and you excelled. And just because you excel just in that, you can excel in 100 other things. So it's first coming into like, what is that value? What is your unique how-to that's not based on whether you're in high school or now? And how do we then unpack that and create that drive again so you can do that? And just in like, I've seen people transform in 2 years once they have that clarity, right? They take those steps, they go from being unstuck and like out of their head. I have clients being like, wow, I just like got out of my head and now know where I'm going. And now like they're totally different because now they like walk around knowing who they are, what they want to do, and they get unstuck because the stuckness is within. There's nothing in society that's holding you handcuffed. You know what I mean? It's you inside being paralyzed, thinking that you either had your chance and now you don't, or that was once in a lifetime. No, there's 100 million lifetimes. You could keep doing it. You could keep reinventing. I even know for myself, I'm like, wow, if I want to go do something else, it's that belief that you are limitless. And like you said, it's not about Limitless is not about indulging in procrastinations or indulging in negative things that do you harm, right? Like if you're an overthinker, like you said, or negative, or they're not, you should not be watching the news, right? If you're someone who thinks worst case scenario, stay away from negative things. Don't feed into that. If you're someone who has and emotionally eats, right, it's really important to have controls in your house, right? But limitless is not not from that, right? Limitless is not, oh, I'm going to indulge in everything. Limitless is you believing that everything is in your reach, you believing you can learn anything, you believing you have something that the world needs and that you can give and only you can give. And it doesn't matter if you have education, it doesn't matter if you have money. It's like everyone can bring that value. And I've seen it everywhere in the globe from every economic class. You know what I mean? Like once you know it, you know it. And I completely agree with you that you don't need education. Like even with my own kids, like you can and you can't, like if you enjoy it, go for it. Like I did like studying, but did I need all of it? Probably not, So when I thought about my entrepreneur thing, I'm like, I'm not going to get an MBA. No, I'm not going back to school. I think I can learn it. I know how to learn. And so I'm going to learn by doing. You know what I mean? And so we can all learn by doing. And if you like education, go for it. It has all these great things. I loved it. But I think if you don't like it, that should not stop you from learning and creating whatever you have. I know amazing people who've never gone to school and been done amazing things. It's you believing that your gift is worthy and that you are worthy. And that's the limitless, because we, like, when we're limited, we think we can only do like 3 things, or that the world is out for us and it's not for us. And we just have to just stick to our box. And that's not true. Like, you are limitless. Everything's in your potential. The timeline can vary, but especially now in our digital world, you can do anything you want if you believe it.
I think it's so much to unpack, but I really like that because it's just like school is not for everybody. But what I will say, and I used to teach my students, like, learn these skills I'm teaching you because it's going to help you in the real world. Like I said, I used to teach them how to take notes, because it's like, okay, you may not be a teacher, or you may not be in education, you may not go to college, but if you have a go on a job, or if you want to be that super entrepreneur and you do go to YouTube University, which I am enrolled in, you need to know how to take notes. You need to know how to keep information. And those are things you do learn in school if you have the right teachers. Because a lot of times I've seen teachers just say, okay, take notes. The kids don't know how to do that. You have to teach. That's a skill that has to be taught. So I feel like if you have the right teacher who was like me, like, you know what, we have to learn this stuff because it is what it is. But I'm going to teach y'all embed the strategy you need for life, because this is really what you're going to need. You're not going to need to know about the Mayflower, the Mayflower Compact. I think that's what it is. You don't need to know the dates of the Civil War, or when was this president assassinated, or you will never need the Pythagorean theorem. So I still can't tell you what I've used that for. But you need to know, maybe how to, you may not need to remember that formula, but like you talk about formula, you need to know how to come up with a formula. You need to know how to study the A plus B equals C, just that angle with, if I do this and this, then this is going to happen. So those type of things are needed.
Yeah. I would also say, like, one thing that's really undermined that I've seen and I actually grew up with is, like, people don't notice the power of peer teaching. So, like, we're always relying on teachers and managers, and even when I was like a director, I used to tell my team, like, this is not, I always go back to colonial because, I'm like, I'm all about decolonizing the system. Like, we're always going from bottom down, top, bottom, top, bottom. But the thing is, if all of us have a gift, like even the students in your class, they all have a skill they can teach you, right? So let's say even with the note taking, there could be probably another student that's really good at note taking in the class, naturally, right? They could teach the other student, right? And so even think about, like, I tell students a lot too, stop waiting for when you're not a student anymore. Like, because I'm like, what do you have on your LinkedIn? What do you have in your profile on your Facebook? They're like, student. I'm like, you're more than a student. You already have a superpower that you could be teaching all the students around you. And every student has that, right? So taking the time to even, like, collective power, like talking to the person next to you. Because all of us go to our friends for their superpower. Like, think about when you had to a system of your friends. each of your friend has something that you go to for them, right? Maybe one's a good listener, one gives you good advice, one knows how to fix things. Maybe the other one's like a really good planner or good with time, right? Think about just even in your own system, they can all be teaching you a skill, right? So even like I had some pretty bad teachers too. I went to like the largest high school in the US,
Mhm.
but there was a lot of knowledge between the peers, and even now in the entrepreneurship world, like I'm like, sure, like some people are like, I have some people are like, well, we don't have access to I don't know, think about the top entrepreneurs like Shark Tank or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but we all have something on this table that we could teach each other. Like, don't always wait. Or you know what I mean? And those narratives that, well, I had this or I had that. Like there's all these skills you can learn from people around you in your community. And I think like that's where it goes back to your isolation point, right? One of the
Mhm.
key things of why not always to be isolated is because there is something you can learn and a message that everyone can give you, everyone around you. And if you're always isolated, you miss out on that. You miss out on learning and opportunities that's like right in your face.
For sure, for sure. So now my next question would be to you. So how do you prepare how do you prepare, since we're in the challenge section, how do you prepare yourself to face unexpected challenges that do come about? Because that's gonna happen.
Oh, I face them all the time. And because I think one is knowing that growth isn't linear,
Yeah.
right? Look, growth is not like a straight line. It's messy. It's messy. And but part of that, and so I don't believe in the the word failure. For me, it's a setback because it's not a failure. Sometimes, like if it didn't work out, something else is going to work out for you, right? So I feel like we use failure a lot, but I think it's more like it's a lesson we had to learn. So that's why I'm like, no, it was a lesson I had to learn and I learned it and it actually was great for me. Or it was a setback that then put me somewhere else, right? I don't think anyone has gone through something and said, I didn't learn for it, or something else came around that was right for me and that was wrong for me, right? And we learn from these things. So with the setbacks, like I experienced that a lot, even in my journey right now doing this global movement, different things. I have different strengths I have to tap into in my book. And it's learning what works for you. It's just an experiment. So I think it's like rephrasing it that the event is the failure, not you. Because I think where people get stuck on the setbacks is that they internalize it, that it was them. I suck. I failed. I did something. Remove the I and put it. It
Mm.
sucked. It was not great. It was the wrong thing. It's not you. It was just something you tested. And it's going to be a test that leads you into, like, that opens up other avenues that are for you. That's it, but not I. And so for me, I never say I, it's an it. And especially like, as you know, like in the entrepreneur world, like I was going in, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing about social media, knew nothing about ed videos. My first videos, the video itself, like I said, it was not good. But then I learned how to make it better. I learned how to do new things, new different posts, new stuff, right? We're working in mental models that other people created. So it's learning those systems. It's not me, it's I'm learning that system. So I think that's what I would challenge everyone. Don't see that when you go through setbacks, go do them, test them, go through it, feel them out. But see it as that. It's just testing, like you're going through a roller coaster and giving them feedback. You're going through a theme park for the first time and filling out a questionnaire, right? That's all that is. But then from there, from the other side of it, what you're going to learn and gain from yourself and push through, it's totally worth it.
It's a great segue. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's go to the next segue, or the next conversation, next segment, which is the weekly sabbatical. And this season and in this segment, we just kind of reflect on some things, picking back off what you were saying, challenging yourself. I like the analogy of like going through an amusement park, saying, or going through a roller coaster. Okay, this needs to do this needs to do this, and looking at it from that way, because a lot of us we don't. Now, of course, when I have guests, I do my research and I study people because I like to ask questions that get them going. So I saw in an interview that you look up to Miss Viola Davis. Why is that?
I love her. I love her. Well, one, she embodies all the characteristics. So another question I have on purpose is like, what was your childhood dream? right? And what were the characteristics of that? Because so many people see their childhood dream and they're like, well, I didn't become a doctor, I didn't become a lawyer, so that dream was, crap.
Right.
And I challenged that, and I'm like, it was never about the career, your childhood dream. It was about the characteristics that career embodied. Like if you were a doctor, sometimes people are like, oh, it's because I wanted to help people. Or some people are like, I thought about doctor because they talk to people and because they connect to people. Or some people are like, because they do surgeries and they're detailed. You could have 10 people who say doctor, but the characteristics are all different. But we forget that. And then we just go back to like that career. So for me, my childhood dream was like, I wanted to be Walt Disney, a meteorologist, a UN ambassador, but it was all because they were like being visionary, authentic, and vulnerable. And like Viola embodies all that. Like she's authentic, she's sensitive, but she's also ambitious, and she puts very positive messages, changing the narrative, wants to change the world, and she's authentic and true in herself and loves herself, right? And so for me, I love her for that. Like I follow her, I love everything she posts. But again, because she's authentic, she's comfortable with who she's at. She's been through a lot of struggles, but still hasn't stopped smiling. Do you know what I mean? Like they haven't taken away her light. And so I always aspire to, like, I hope to keep that Viola spirit in my life, that even doesn't matter. Like, yeah, I went through a lot of struggles too, but that I didn't let it dim my light either. And I hope to continue being like her, where it never dims your life and that you can continue being positive regardless of what the system has thrown at you.
But it's interesting because you talked about her because again, everything always aligns. And we talked
Yes.
earlier about um the metrics thing and how people didn't reach their goals when they wanted them. If you actually look back, she was in so many movies before she finally got that big break, before she got the awards. I remember she was in Get Rich or Die Trying with 50 Cent, and oh three, I think she was in Tyler Perry movie. She's been in
Yep.
had acting roles before she finally got those real looks, and where now she is the person people look up to. Because let's be honest, you wasn't looking up to her in 2010. Nobody was. And not saying because people that knew her personally, but once the world saw her talent all the way, because she was overlooked, which most of us are. And I think why we can relate to people like Viola Davis, we can relate to the people like even Tyler Perry, some people like that, is because they were overlooked. But when they finally got that look, they were ready. They knew that they could do this. They believed that they could do that. They believed that they could reach those pinnacles that, as you said earlier, our families won't see it. I said before on this podcast, talked about how, like, a prophet has no reward in their own home. People are over familiar with you. And when they're over familiar with you, that's their weakness, but it's your strength, because you can now say, I don't want you to get caught up in pride of like, I'm gonna show you, but you can use that as a fuel to the fire per se, versus from a standpoint of told you so, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. And she got more no's than yeses in her life. And she was also like bullied even in the, throughout the whole thing. And still, she never gave up on her aspiration. She knew that this was her calling and this was her gift, and continued with it. And still continued it being kind as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
She didn't let it change who she was.
No, for sure. Which is go to the next question. So we talked about knowing your purpose and all that good stuff. So could you recommend any tools or techniques for a person to identifying and then pursuing one's purpose?
Yes. So, I mean, I have the full step thing in the workbook and the book. And actually, like, I purposely, and everyone thought I was crazy, I put the digital ebook for both things, 99 cents. So anybody can get this. It's not a profit thing for me.
What's
For
the
me,
name
I
of the
want
book?
everyone, the Creating Your Limitless Life book and workbook. And I have that so that everyone has access to finding out their purpose. And the workbook is great because, like, a lot of people don't have time to read, but the workbook has 50 prompts, 15-minute prompts that you can do a day. And it's super easy. And it's a lot of people are like, I don't remember how to journal. Like I journaled as a kid, but oh my God, or I've never journaled. What is journal, right? But this has prompts that you can actually write and do that introspection in that season of isolation, or even just like for yourself every day. So one prompt we could do here on the spot, actually.
Okay.
If you had unlimited resources, or if you want to put a number, $20 billion, what global problem would you solve?
Hmm. I don't want to be generic and say world hunger. I just feel like that's just like, oh, I want
It's
to end
okay.
world hunger. What is nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that's everyone's like put on the spot answer. I want to end world hunger. I'm not necessarily I wouldn't necessarily want to end war. Honestly, I want to do what Joe Biden is not. I want to get rid of the student loans because a lot of these people, it's tearing them up, and it's unfortunate in some cases because I mean, of course, there's many other problems, but I say student loans because this is something, again, when we talk about being lied to, right? We were programmed to go to school, get these degrees, and not everybody, but a lot of people aren't using their degree. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day when my parents was in school, you got a bachelor's degree, you probably could work, it was you won a Grammy. Now you get a bachelor's degree, it's like you can't do anything. You still That's why we have a such thing as post grad depression. I don't believe post grad depression existed 20 years ago. What's this, 2024? Did post grad depression exist in 2004? It did. Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. But okay, well, did it exist in 1994?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that we need to end these student loans because so many people, like, you're in debt till you die of a degree in some cases you can't even use. It's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great one. So now tell me, he's like, let's say, the G7, where Biden's there, everyone's there. They're like, that's a great idea. I agree with you. Like, we need to end student loans, do these things. But I mean, take it a step further. How would you do that? So tell me your how, because now they're like, I'm going to give you the money. Now you got to figure out how to do this to the world. What steps would you take? And if you don't know how, that's okay. How
Right.
would you figure out the how?
Right. Well, so in cases like this, because I actually try to have books that ask a lot of questions and they're annoying, but it's needed. So I think that's good. But I think for me, what I would do first is to maybe see one, if we had the money, here's what I would do. I would look at the person who has the oldest student loans and I would see, let's wipe that out first. I would see, that's what my first, to see who has the oldest and who has the most. And then to see if we can just wipe it out, just like, done. It's finito, it's gone. You know what I mean? That's what I would think to do. Um, and of course, I will have to sit and process that, which is good. And I'm glad I'm doing this on camera because this is what people need to see too. You're not going to always have the how right then and there, but at least you got to start, kind of write it down, go pray on it, go back, leave it alone, and come back later. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to have it figured out in that moment every time. So that's good. That's good.
Okay, wait. So you
Um,
mentioned you would first see who's the most affected, and
right.
then
And then I would like to wipe theirs out completely. Now, of course, we see who's the most effective, and then maybe not a petition, because I am a grant writer for those that don't know. We can write an appeal. So we got to get somebody to write it and just write why this person who has this much money, who's most effective, who has this much owed, should be exonerated. They're already 65. They've been paying on it this long. Just wipe it out. They've done that. You know what I mean? That's how I feel.
but they're giving you all this money to solve the solution though for the world. So after that, what would you do?
Mm.
So great, you exonerate the most affected, but what about everyone else who still has a student loan? And what about the student loans that are still happening? So what is like your
So maybe, okay, there we go. We can pay off the debt of everyone who owes it, but then we're gonna stop them from. We're going to maybe invest in more resources that can provide finances and financial. It's good. Provide more money for those who want to go to school but can't afford it. There we go. Provide more resources. So basically, write the appeals and get rid of everybody who already has it. The one that's here is it, and wipe it out, and then make it to where it's very hard for a person to get a student loan because there are so many available resources that it's just like, you just couldn't qualify for anything else. Like, it was just that hard, and that would be hopefully less than 10% of people. Of course, that's not the most realistic, but then when would I just get $20 billion? So
cool? So now think about your personal life. Like, so if somebody came to you with like a problem and said, "Oh my God, like I can't find a job," or maybe they tell you, "Man, this person hasn't been able to, like, they want to start an entrepreneurship thing, but like are really stuck or whatever." Like, would you first go to, so your how to was first see like what's the issue and try to solve the first thing, and then think about ways to find resources and help for them. Would you say that if someone came to you with the problem, you would follow that same approach?
I can't say I will, but I would hope to. Just being honest. So I would hope to. I don't know, but I would try.
Yeah. But would you use that same order? Like, let's figure out what we can nip first, and then let's find ways and like resources and information for you.
I think so. I think I would.
Okay.
I think I would try to keep that angle of trying to get rid of what
Yeah.
what can be easily what can be easily be removed, and then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be good for you to sit on it. So like a part of the whole thing is like with people, that is your how to, how you like to show up in the world. That's what people go to you for. That's your how to. So like the global problem is just to get people, doesn't matter what the
Thank you.
global problem is.
Thank
It's more like how would you do it? Because that's how you help people on your everyday. And so when people can't show up with that, is when they get stuck and frustrated. So, for example, like if you were in a job that never let you like see nip small things and made small things into huge drama, you'd be like, I can't work here because like you need to be in a place that little small things get solved. But if you're in a place that every small thing is a whole dramatic thing, you're gonna be like, like that's where you start feeling like, oh my God, I can't be,
you.
I'm suffocated, because that should be easily solved. I mean, that's in everyone's case. So like how no one answers that how to the same. No one. So it doesn't even matter. That's why you can have like 100 engineers in the same room. How their how to, even if they're all studied the same thing, it's all different. Their how to, how they bring it to the world. Students, parents, everyone. Right. And so the first step that I tell, like with the purpose thing, is figuring this out. Because that, even just knowing that, you're like, crap, can I do that in the circles I'm in with my friends? Do they value that of me? One, can I do that with the job I'm in? Maybe it means you need to have more circles, more different community. Maybe you need to find a different job. Maybe you need to
Right.
look for jobs that you can do this. And like, how powerful is that if you go to an interview and you were to say, you need to hire me because I know where we can, I first identify short-term wins for this organization, and I do that really quickly for you. And that's going to help us meet all of our objectives for the year. You know, I'm not someone who drowns in small things. I get things done, and I find quick solutions that are win-win for all of us, right? How much more powerful that is to go to an interview than just saying like, I did this for 5 years, right? Just,
Right.
no, you have a unique how to. So that's one of the things. And I think you were saying that purpose, one thing first, unpacking this, and then unpacking like, what is my legacy, right? So I have this exercise of like writing your obituary today, which is super uncomfortable, but then rewriting it. What do you want it to say? Because that's not metric oriented. That's impact you want to have, how you want people to feel, how you want them to show up to your thing and being like, you had this impact. You're going to see it has nothing to do with all the things that we think are important. It has to do with how you show up and the impact. And so like, okay, so that's how I want to show up. That's how I've been showing up. And then realizing that you already have a really strong legacy, actually, and I have
Right.
to ground truth it. You've already done amazing things.
Yeah.
The rest of it is bonus, and it's
Yeah.
nothing tied to all these other things people tell you. People are still going to already say amazing things about you. So, and I have this exercise where you text 5 of your friends and ask them things, and you can blame it on me, but it already gives you that ground truth thing. Like, I'm already amazing. So it's everything additional I were to do in my rewrite is bonus, right? Those are new goals to go to, right? But it doesn't, but my essence has always been there. And then like, what's your childhood, the childhood characteristics of your dream? Like, what can you teach the world? What have you overcome and how, right? Because then you get to see the other side of it. What do you love? But it's the combination, right? Because people get confused, like, oh, it's about my legacy. They confuse purpose is just that. No, it's not. Or they confuse purpose with what I love. No, I love dancing. I used to be a competitive dancer. That's not my purpose. Because even in dancing, I was helping people bring out their best selves in dancing. You know what I mean? Dancing was just something I liked. It's where I showed up that I like to do, but that's not my purpose in life and how I solve things and help people. So, but if they want more, it's all in that workbook. You go through one by one and you start getting that clarity. Like, oh wow. And reminder. So I think that what it is like we forget. Like I do this
Yeah.
for first and fourth graders. First graders are super clear. But by the time we're in fourth grade, society and parents and peers have shadowed us, and they're in fourth grade can't answer. But in first grade, they're clear. And it's just going back to like our first grade selves and remembering who we are.
Okay. Okay. Now, last question before we move to the final segment. So we've answered a lot today. We've talked about a lot. A lot of my questions you actually answered before I even got a chance to ask. So that's good. So my final question is, in short, how can someone who feels stuck in conformity start to break free and express them true selves?
Yeah, so I think I was answering that. I think it's first realizing that everyone has been taught those mental models, right? It's like everyone's projecting their own fears onto everyone else. And you have a chance to change things and to show that we don't have to all be the same. We're not robots, we're not clones, and part of that exercise we did right now on your how to is to show, like, I'm sure everyone's going to do this at home and then ask someone next to you and they're not going to answer the same. So we can't be robots. We can't all conform because we all have that question differently. So then how can we all be conforming? That's why I talk about limitless, because that how to you can bring to so many different places. Like now that you imagine you knowing your how to, everybody needs that, right? And it's just more a matter of where can you bring that to. So I think the first step is realizing that you actually have a gift. You actually have something that people need. People have already gone to you for it. And I think first coming with that awareness, then you realize, oh my God, I actually am. Oh my God, actually other places can use this. Actually, I don't have to conform. I am my own person. And if look at the rounds of the people also what helped me, just look around the people who have conformed. Are they really happy? Like when I decided to, like when I left my job, right? And I reached this like pivotal point where, I was like meltdown, because I was like, I don't know why. There was nothing I could pinpoint that was going wrong, but I just felt this suffocation and your body tells you first. I was like, I need to get out of this, right? And I remember thinking to myself, looking at the people above me, like ambassadors, I'm like, I remember sitting, actually, I had this opportunity to sit next to my childhood dream, the UN ambassador. And I looked at her and I asked her about her day, and it was very similar to my day. And I'm like, and I said, "Are you really happy?" And she's like, "Well, a lot of
Yeah.
different things, right?"
Yeah.
And it's similar challenges, opportunities, whatever. And then I realized, what am I doing? Like, it was never about that title, right? It was like when I looked at them in their day to day, I had to see it. It was like not that there's just anything wrong with their day to day. I had to see, is that day to day going to make me happy?
Right.
No, no. And so, like the people who you are looking up to, right? Are they? And you might be looking up to them for the wrong, different reasons. But let's say the titles you're looking up to, are they really happy? Do they really display what you want? So why are you conforming? Like, what really makes you happy? And go after that, and people will adjust. And even if they don't adjust, it's your life. People still don't adjust to my weird nomadic, they call it the weird nomadic lifestyle. I love it. So that's what matters. And you have to own your truth. And when you're owning and living your truth, you can actually inspire others to live their truth.
So then my question is, again, this is my last question before I move to the final thing, I promise. So with the nomadic lifestyle, which is a lifestyle I know I'm going to live at some point, how does that work with a whole family? Is everybody just like on the same page? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, part of like what's cool about the workbook and the purpose things, like you should do that with whoever you're dating, right? Like we always ask people usual questions like, how do you want to parent, or how do you want to budget money? I mean, all those things are important too, but ask them, what's your highest aspirations when you see yourself 5-10 years from now? What kind of life do you want to live? And I was very I mean, it's luck and also alignment that, like my partner now, like he's, my husband now, he's like aligned. He loves to travel. He wanted to live like a lifestyle outside of status quo, outside of
Mhm.
social expectation. We had that, and we had the same type of legacy we wanted to live in the world, and that's really important more than the other check marks is that. Because I remember in previous relationships, people would ask me, what's your aspiration? I would say, oh, six-figure job. That's not an aspiration. The That's a goal. But your aspiration is like, how do you want to have impact? What are you doing? And when I said that, I imagined myself traveling, being free and flexible, right? So I changed the way I answer that question now, right? It's not about a title or about a dollar figure, which those can be great goals. It's more about how do you want to feel an impact. So I had that very aligned with my spouse. So we have that in common. And so we like that lifestyle of being super flexible and like working wherever. And that tied too that we wanted opportunities that were remote. So we knew we couldn't stay in that job because that job required you to be in the office, be a representative. I couldn't, even though I did a lot of impact as a diplomat, I couldn't have a social media page. I couldn't talk about things I believed in, and I couldn't work remote. And I was like,
Mm.
that's not going to work for us what we want. So I switched
Right.
to career that I can be remote. I can be wherever. I can help people wherever, and we can work wherever. I mean, and we have kids, but our kids, we decided let's put them in an international school because international school, they're a lot more flexible with expats that travel, so they can miss school, and it's not as big of a deal as in a public school system, right? Where it's like you can't miss X days. So there's ways to work around it, right? If you know you're going to have that lifestyle, there's everything out there. There are international schools, there's charter schools, there's schools for people who travel all the time, right? So that's part of the limitless thing is open your mind, right? It's not just for singles, like a nomadic lifestyle. We're a family with two kids, and I refused to believe that it wasn't possible for a family to do that. And I also, people told me, oh, then you're going to lose touch with your parents and family. No, I still talk to my mom a lot. Like I still visit her a lot. That's up to you to maintain a relationship. Like a relationship's not based on whether you're next to the next person. But so you have to debunk all those limiting beliefs that you're told, and you can have it. And you have to have that communication, that alignment with who you're with. If that's important to you, find someone who wants to do that with you. And
Right.
the kids will adjust and love it too. Like my kids like it because it's what you show them as being positive, right? And that that you can create and coming to that compromise. Like sometimes they're like, hey, I don't want to travel this month. Okay, we won't travel this month, right? And you have that communication as a family.
Absolute good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so y'all, let's move into the final segment for the day. Been a great episode. Game time. And this game is called The Limits Are Off. So I'm gonna name a few different scenarios, and I want you to tell me whether or not this person is not is lim- the limits are off, as it says, or if they're still kind of limited. Okay. So just a few scenarios here. So you ready? All right.
Ready.
So all right. The first um, scenario, a person has decided that they want to lose weight and they've gone on a plan to lose that weight. They get to their goal weight, but yet they still want more.
I would say that they are still limited because the goal wasn't the right goal.
Mm,
Um, I think it's more, and I kind of keep going to that. It's about how do you want to feel and how do you want to be. So I think maybe they thought that by that weight they put it to a metric rather than a feeling. So I think that's where they would have to work on it. What is that feeling? And I could relate to that. In 2019, I lost all this weight and got super fit, and I still was not happy. But I think it was more about I wanted to feel good in close. It was the wrong metric, but what I did instead was I hired a stylist. And after the stylist, it was nothing about the weight. Even though the weight was good, it was something else was missing. So I would say that person needs to dig a little deep on what is it, what is the feeling that they want to feel that they haven't reached yet, and then readjust.
okay. The next one is this person loves community, but they realize that every party that they go to isn't enough.
Well, there's like, yeah, still limited because why are they associating community with just parties? It may not be parties at all. Like, I have a super large community right now, and we do occasional parties, but it's not just about parties, right? We have like we have outings that are about ideas. We have other outings that are about connection and sharing. So it may mean that they love community, but maybe they're looking for community that maybe wants to spark ideas, maybe want to share a connection, maybe want to talk about the future, and maybe they feel like they can't do that in parties. There's not one, so I think that's where they're still stuck. There's not one definition of what community is. Like, sure, there's different seasons or different things that you might want to do with your community, and you don't have to just have one. You can have maybe the community you still go to parties with, but you should have other ones that are ideas and helping you, supporting you through your goals. Maybe you're not getting that support that you need. So I would encourage them to think community not just in terms of parties, but more about how can they support you with your highest aspirations. And if they're not there, there's a whole digital world where you can find communities that can help you with that.
The last one, a person who loves to travel and decided to not settle with a regular job so they're able to move and travel as much as they want while still working.
I mean, that's my life. So I want to think it's limitless because that means that they're doing what they want and living the lifestyle they want. From what I'm reading, that sounds like someone, yeah, doesn't it's not conforming, right? They're doing how they want it and structuring their life how they want it.
All right, good stuff. All right, good job. All right, so finally, let's go to the question, the challenge for the audience today. Identify one self-imposed limitation or belief that you think is holding you back, and I want you to commit one action that challenges this limitation and reflect on how overcoming this barrier. You got cut off because I only had a certain amount of, but how this barrier has stopped you from moving forward all the way. And also, sometimes, like we discussed so many gems in this episode, sometimes your parents could be the fear. If the fear of your parents' opinion or family's opinion could be the fear, sometimes maybe even somebody you're with could be the fear of their opinion, or the fear of your own, just like what are people going to say, or do you struggle with the fear of man, like what's going on here? So it's things you need to ultimately figure out. So yeah, we had a great episode today. Anything else you want to add before you go? Anything you want to pub? Anything you want to do?
No, I just want everyone to, I hope like everyone got an idea that you are limitless. You can do anything you want. And that is my dream in life, that everyone, I really believe that we could tackle depression, anxiety, war, conflict, all these things. And if we all knew our superpower and lived it through. So I just encourage all of you to like work through those limiting beliefs, find your core, find your purpose, live it through. And if you don't have community, you don't have champions, like reach out to me. I'm on Instagram, b.act.change. I respond to every message I get, even if it's not right away, because I'm here to support and I'll be your champion.
All right, y'all got a new champion. If it ain't your mama, your brother, you got it with Doctor.
Yep.
All right, y'all. That is it for this week. Tune in next week. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And also remember, people, I love us for real.